Hello and welcome to another Wrestling Roundtable discussion podcast. I'm Adam Wilbourn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dadley boys of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, to discuss another burning wrestling issue. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify for daily wrestling podcasts where we review pay-per-views, Raw, SmackDown. We have interviews, more roundtable discussions like this one, and a roundup of the week complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But gents, the question I want to ask you to answer even today. We are just over 2 weeks away from the Royal Rumble. Who are your early predictions to win both the men's and women's?
I mean, it's harder to capture the interest of the men's one at the moment because I really don't know what's there. There seems to be obvious winners being set up on Monday Night Raw, but the Raw roster feels so depleted and so lacking in excitement. Possibly at the expense of there being any major stars outside of Brock and Braun anymore on the show, that going for someone like Seth or Drew, the favourites, the heavy favourites, feel the least interesting. Looking forward to WrestleMania. I'm trying to think outside the box and I can't look past SmackDown. And at the moment I think of people with nothing to do on SmackDown and I'm looking at someone like Samoa Joe. I want to be sort of more entertained by the idea of some fantasy booking scenario than looking at what they're giving us in real life on television at the moment. That doesn't feel to me, other than possibly really crazy big exceptions, like any sort of exciting full-timers that I want to win.
It's a weird situation to be in because obviously last year we had such an exciting winner in Shinsuke Nakamura, yes, which they didn't exactly make the most of. No. And of course the inaugural Women's Royal Rumble match. But then this year, it's a surreal scenario to be in, first of all, because obviously Roman Reigns won't be in it, and his name has been sort of associated with the Royal Rumble for many years now. And yeah, considering this is kind of seen as a springboard to one of the big matches at WrestleMania, it's hard to see past some of the matches at the Rumble to see where they're going to be. You can sort of guess that hopefully Daniel Bryan will still be WWE champion.
Oh, God willing.
But beyond that, I mean, Braun Strowman's promo on Raw this week wasn't great. There's question marks there.
Yes.
What's the future for Brock Lesnar? And as a result, sort of booking backwards from that, you don't really know what to do. Just to run you through the favourites in terms of the odds of both. Seth Rollins, according to the bookies' odds that came out earlier on this week, is the favourite, of course, for the Men's Royal Rumble. He's evens. Second favourite, Drew McIntyre. Then the likes of Andrade Cien Almas. He's third.
No.
But then the likes of Finn Balor, John Cena, AJ Styles, The Rock, and The Miz. And then in terms of the women's one, it's effectively, I mean, you could argue for a couple more, but despite the fact that she's already got a title match in there at the Royal Rumble, a lot of people talking obviously about Becky Lynch winning it. If she doesn't win it, Charlotte Flair's going to win it. And beyond that, yes, you could mention the likes of Ember Moon and Alexa Bliss, but it's kind of between those two for the Women's Royal Rumble, I think.
I would say so. In terms of the men's, the thing about Seth Rollins, who's been telegraphed to win it big time on Raw over the past month, he's even alluded to a meeting with Brock Lesnar on the horizon, having buried him almost for not being there during that promo with Constable Corbin. Now, in previous years, the Rumble's been defined by there's one winner that the fans want who doesn't win, and a winner who the office wants who does win. And the problem this year for me is that I don't feel either of those things is true. I mean, the telegraphing Seth Rollins winning it, I don't feel like they're 100% behind him. And as popular as he is, and I think personally he's an inconsistent performer, but his performance in that six-man tag on Raw was electric. Loved the moonsault, thought it was absolutely great. He looked like he was on fire, and maybe that's just conditioning because Michael Cole said it about 50 times, but it's effective. But he's not coming into this thing on a wave of sheer defiance like Daniel Bryan was in 2014, or even Dean Ambrose was in 2016, Punk 2013. He feels like he's everybody's favourite wrestler on Raw, but is that enough? Especially when there's been more popular wrestlers than him, and it wasn't enough for them. So I don't know. I've got no idea who's winning this men's
Rumble. Do you think
Rumble.
they've arguably sort of shot themselves in the foot long term? I mean, the decision to turn Bryan heel and give him the title cannot really be questioned now. But having said all that, if you'd have said immediately after WrestleMania last year, for example, who's going to win the Royal Rumble, it was going to be Daniel Bryan, wasn't it? But obviously they botched his face run so badly they had to turn him heel, and he has worked wonders with it and continues to do so. And
best thing in all of wrestling for me right now.
I suppose if you ask anyone they'd probably say just leave the WWE Championship on him for the entirety of 2019.
Longer.
But like you say, taking him out of the picture, and obviously Roman Reigns due to his illness, it's a difficult field to argue, and especially because you're trying to work out how are they going to book this? Who are they going to book the winner against?
Like, bear in mind, they weren't forced to put Braun Strowman in the title match against Brock Lesnar. Like, he stood there right there as a credible threat to Brock's title at a WrestleMania. Whereas at the Royal Rumble, the worry is, well, I say worry, I'm not even that bothered about Braun anymore, but the worry is that he just becomes Brock's Royal Rumble victim, because we're talking about a Seth win or possibly a Drew win based on the idea that they're going to fight Brock Lesnar, not that they're going to fight Braun Strowman. So now we're ruling him out of the title at the worst time of the year to be ruled out of the title picture. Does he go into the Rumble if he already loses to Brock, like that year that Roman did and he came out at number 30, you know? Are we ruling him out of the Rumble completely, like on the assumption that he's not going to win? He doesn't like come out of the Royal Rumble in good shape unless he comes out as a Universal Champion, and I don't think many people are picking him for it, because it doesn't really offer the most exciting WrestleMania payoff, does it, for any of these winners?
No,
I don't think it's like we say, unless you're traveling to SmackDown, unless you are talking about, you know, it's been posited by a lot of people, this John Cena Daniel Bryan dream match. That to me feels like the best combination of title match and Royal Rumble results coming out of the pay-per-view. I think, you know, what you can build on Raw with things like the Elimination Chamber or the ways in which they kind of slot people into title matches, like, there's not really a strong mid-card on Raw, like, that, you know, you can sort of put anyone from, you can't pluck anyone from there and have them win the Royal Rumble and it feel as credible as Cena winning it all to challenge Bryan.
Now, one thing we've obviously discussed a fair bit leading up to this Royal Rumble, and of course looking ahead to WrestleMania, is disregarding the fact that she's in the SmackDown Women's Championship match, is Becky Lynch winning the Royal Rumble and switching brands to face Ronda Rousey. Could you argue the reverse of that for, say, someone like, if you're looking for a babyface hero who the fans would love to see win the Royal Rumble,
yes,
switching from Raw to SmackDown to face Daniel Bryan, Finn Balor, surely you look no further.
Finn Balor, for me, I'm going to have to do more than like a sudden Royal Rumble win for me to believe in him again, because the last 2.5 years of his career have just been a complete and utter waste. And what's more is that he's not even sold it as such. He's just smiling his way all the way through it. So someone like Finn Balor, maybe one Rumble win could cement him as this player again, but I don't know. I think it needs more. But really what's happening here is that WWE is paying the price for such an incredibly narrow focus on Roman Reigns for the past couple of years, because now that the guy who isn't synonymous with the Rumble isn't going to be at the Rumble, then it feels like this like anonymous field of participants. And my worry about Seth Rollins, who's the clear favourite, we can't get beyond that, the bookies know it, you only have to like watch Raw to know it, is that I don't think Vince sees him as the guy. I think he's had the chance to do it on several occasions and never seen him. I can see a scenario all too readily wherein Seth Rollins wins that Rumble, and then on the day of WrestleMania itself, Vince takes one look at Seth and just says, nah, Brock's going over, give him some more money. So on that basis, I can't really invest in a winner like Seth Rollins, nor on a similar basis Finn Balor, who, let's face it, he more or less sees as equals.
Balor would require like the booking, like you did the Iron Man shift last year, and that was like flushed away within weeks of like the Royal Rumble itself. You would need him to come out at 1 or 2, and I think you would need him to come out as the Demon. And the Demon has never been defeated before, and he goes the whole way again, and he wins it that way. That we've seen before, that like you can. That's the way to reheat Finn Balor, isn't it?
No, it is.
So with like, that and a Rumble win, then all of a sudden you might have something on your hands.
You know you're onto something there, because I keep thinking back to SummerSlam 2018, and I have not given, in the weeks and months prior to that event, like a single damn about Finn Balor. Not obviously through his work, because I really, really rate him in the ring, but the booking was just so apathetic,
program was rancid, wasn't
and
it?
so inconsistent. I mean, it was Baron Corbin. How could I possibly care? But through one entrance alone, I was reminded of the fact that that Demon character still has got lots and lots of potential hitherto unexplored. And you're right, if he came out as the Demon, I stand corrected, and entered that Rumble and won it, what a story that would be. What a story that would be.
Looking at some of the other favourites, as we mentioned Seth Rollins there. Drew McIntyre, as I said, is second favourite according to the bookies as it stands. Initially, if you'd said this maybe 2 months ago, it did seem a relatively straightforward piece of booking before, obviously, Braun got injured and et cetera, et cetera. It did seem a relatively straightforward piece of booking of Braun defeats Brock at the Rumble. Brock goes away to have his match with Daniel Cormier in the UFC. And you have Drew win the Rumble, and then you have a simple heel babyface dynamic between the two of them, and it's everything that Vince McMahon would want in a WrestleMania main event, really, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest with Drew, I'm not going to completely around Christmas time, I was really worried that all the interest I built up in Drew had been lost by those defeats. I think those defeats came at exactly the wrong time. It's this time of year where you don't want to be diffusing characters that you've worked hard to build up. But I don't really think a heel like Drew is very good fodder for a WrestleMania title match. The show itself makes you think about baby faces on long chases. We have two champions at the moment. Brock Lesnar and Daniel Bryan may be very different, but they're both huge heel mountains to climb for baby faces. Those are good title matches for WrestleMania. Drew doesn't fit in this particular puzzle. I'm not going to rule him out getting back in the title picture post WrestleMania, especially if a new babyface is carrying one of the belts. But it just doesn't feel like it's his time. I got a sense of good tension between him and Cena on Raw, so I would completely buy him being positioned against a top star and then going over at WrestleMania, having a big night, having a good night. But it just doesn't feel right. The time just doesn't feel right for him. Had he still been undefeated? Maybe. Had there been an AJ Styles, let's say, a top one of the brands, possibly. But it's just wrong place, wrong time for Drew. For me anyway, watching it. And this is coming from somebody that has gone from not really liking him to wanting to believe as much as WWE seem to believe in him.
An arguable surprise third favourite is Andrade Cien Almas. I've been a huge fan of his since he arrived on the main roster. Obviously, he was a phenomenal star in NXT as well. And I'd love to see him, especially considering the performance he put on this week. Love to see him win the Rumble. Difficult to see that, though, considering what's going on SmackDown, what's happening with the WWE Championship.
It's honestly difficult to see anybody from SmackDown winning that match, which is why all the attention and the conversation centers around Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre. Clearly, they're not going to do an all-heel match at WrestleMania. No. So there needs to be a babyface to win that Rumble from the SmackDown side. Now, it's more like a puzzle to solve than anything else, because if you look at the babyfaces, AJ Styles is not going to WrestleMania against Bryan. They're not doing a rematch.
No.
It's just not something they do. And be breaking a habit of a lifetime if that was the case. I don't think it's happening. Who else is a babyface on SmackDown?
The Miz until he turns on Shane McMahon for their WrestleMania match.
So that's happening.
Yeah.
So
you're
telling me, just to clarify here, you're telling me that the Miz isn't going to face Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania like I've been predicting for the last 6 months?
I mean, Greg's going to say dollar signs when you walk in the day after.
Furious.
Jeff Hardy, nah.
Nah,
I mean, I've got an eternal reservoir of respect for that man, but he's not a headliner.
No.
Ray?
Not at this time. Ray, he's basically Jeff Hardy with a mask on for me, like an aging workhorse who's just delighted me. And
a miracle body.
And a miracle body who's wowed me and entertained me for a stupid number of years, who nonetheless is not really a main event level talent at this stage of his career, and nor should he be. Who else is a babyface on SmackDown? I mean, it's a puzzle.
Well, let's run through some of the other. We mentioned John Cena there.
It's not going to be Almas to answer your question.
No, we mentioned John Cena there. I'll give you some other names. You just pick out who you want to talk about out of these. John Cena 20-1, The Rock 20-1.
I mean, I always want to talk about The Rock, but it's irrelevant, isn't it? Because he's not turning up for the Royal Rumble.
No.
I don't think,
Yeah, he was one that was tipped about 6 months ago, wasn't he?
That was during the furore of Crown Jewel, and suddenly everybody realizing this company now has literally more money than sense, so you can fantasy book any WrestleMania match you want and you might going to get it. But I just don't see why The Rock would bother with, by all means, if he fancies a WrestleMania night out, he can do it, but why would he bother using the Rumble to build it up? He could walk into a WWE title match by saying to Vince, I'd like a title match at WrestleMania, please. That's how they'd book that. Exactly.
And one other name I did want to mention quickly before we get onto our sort of long shot wild card picks, let's just say Batista, Bryan at WrestleMania. If the proposed Triple H match may have fallen through, obviously with Triple H getting injured.
Lovely symmetry.
That would be a lovely story. A really lovely story.
What, 5 years on would that be?
Yeah.
5 years on. Yeah. I don't know how much I would like the story as much as I would like just the sheer cuteness of the connection. I'm not entirely convinced there's a really good story there. Is he a really good protagonist for Daniel Bryan's antagonist? I mean, this is a guy...
I think you could do a lot better with... not a lot better, that's the wrong choice of words. There's a far more intriguing storyline against Batista Triple H would be the match that everyone would love to see first and foremost, despite the fact this is a Rumble win and a WrestleMania main event. And if not that, something like Batista Orton would be so intriguing. With the way Orton's been... I've loved Orton over the last 6 months, and I think it's an easy booking that as well.
Yeah. It should not go unmentioned that Batista and Daniel Bryan on an episode of Raw in 2010 had this phenomenal 4-minute match. I'm talking one of the best short matches you'll ever see.
Bryan was on the old NXT.
Yeah,
Right
it was outstanding. So they've got a clear chemistry. Like their exchanges at WrestleMania 30 were great. Yeah. They've got evident chemistry. There's like a cute connection. I don't think there's much dramatic heft to it beyond that. Not something I think is a great thing to do.
Let's go for our wild card picks then for the Royal Rumble.
I mean, I feel like I could pull out the same script for about 7 different podcasts. Matt Riddle. Like, you know, I keep thinking that there's got to be a time when an NXT push can just be a huge, ultra, super, mega NXT push. No going through the ranks, you know, no sort of having to like earn your stripes on the main roster. I keep thinking that Matt Riddle should be the guy that beats Brock Lesnar by hook or by crook somewhere. Like, somewhere down the road, if anyone, it should be Riddle. So what about debuting in the Rumble? Like, he's an unannounced call-up. Because, like, already he looks too big for NXT. You know, the follow-up match from TakeOver with Cassiano on television was great, but he's a star beyond Full Sail, and I dare say he's probably a star beyond TakeOver. And I think it was Sidgwick that first made the point to me that he surely is a guy that Vince McMahon looks at and thinks the world of just on visuals alone. So I throw him in the Rumble and have him win and have him beat Brock Lesnar.
Michael Sidgwick?
Because their SummerSlam 2013 match was so incredible, and because there's such an absolute deficit of worthy baby faces, and we've realised to our cost last year that like an all heel match is not going to work. Like an all babyface match isn't going to work at WrestleMania because Styles Nakamura, really, I think we all expected such a great match that the build was completely immaterial to it, and in the end we've got neither. So I don't want to see a babyface versus babyface match or a heel versus heel match. I want to see at WrestleMania like a classic babyface versus heel dynamic. And along those lines, I want to see John Cena versus Daniel Bryan. I mean, who out there doesn't have an in-law, you know, extended, if anyone's watching, an extended in-law that you've never really had, like, a problem with? You know what I mean? Like, their in-laws, you can fashion a program between in-laws and anyone of a certain age, which, incidentally, is WWE's core audience. It's going to resonate with everyone. It's not quite like Austin McMahon, where everyone's got a boss or has had a boss that... or a teacher or some kind of authority figure that you want to rage against. Like an in-law is like relatively unbroken ground for pro wrestling that has got a tangible, real connection with someone, like with people.
Something about that match as well. Like, I want just for one more night to like believe that John Cena's a great wrestler and he's got a performance in him, because I've been so depressed by everything he's done, probably since the AJ Styles title win at the Rumble 2 years ago. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Like, but I've been actively like disappointed in John Cena. Here is a man that was given everything and occasionally showed these flashes of like wonderful in-ring excellence that nobody thought him capable of. And he's given so little of it back. He always looked like the guy that would give plenty of it back. Like, you know, he told The Rock that he would stay forever, and he didn't stay forever, and that's fine. I don't judge him for going to Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't give a toss about that.
I judge him for how
he
little...
can stay away for as long as he wants.
Like, I judge him for how little he offers virtually everybody else on the roster. The person he's put over the most is Becky Lynch, probably in the last 2 years. And I would just like to see just one more reminder that John Cena can be the John Cena that he so occasionally was, you know.
Bryan versus Cena, hair versus hair?
Yes, please. Bryan wins. Like, I want Bryan to
Bryan
win.
wins. My pick. You mentioned earlier that you either see someone that the bosses want to win or the fans want to win. I'm going to pitch someone who both want to win. The bosses clearly want this person to win. The fans have suddenly realised.
I can tell by your cadence.
Yeah.
I can tell by your cadence that something's going to annoy us with this.
I'm a dad, and this sounds like my dad setting up a joke.
The fans have warmed to this person, and I've warmed to this person. We've all warmed to this person towards the end of
Feeling pretty
2018.
to this story.
I'm going to predict the winner of the Men's Royal Rumble match 2019, the number 30 entrant, R-Truth. There is your baby face to the heel Daniel Bryan.
What's
and
up
I think
with Adam Wilbourn?
I think he goes over at WrestleMania.
You not watch SmackDown this week? Are you kidding me with your patter? At least make it make sense.
He's been to Stamford this week. He's having a lovely time.
He's just been beaten by Daniel Bryan this week.
Michael Sidgwick had a chest infection and you made him enunciate. That's how cross he was.
Right. Let's talk more about the Women's Royal Rumble match, because as we said, it's between two people, really, isn't it? Or is it?
Look, I'm happy with Charlotte to win. I worry that sounds a little bit like Sidgwick's proposition that you've got like the one the fans want, the ones the office want. But I think Charlotte Flair's a great Royal Rumble winner. I'm not concerned about Becky being part of the Asuka title match. I think you've got to, if she's not beating Asuka, which we can assume she's probably not, there's got to be some sort of screwy finish that, which I wouldn't envy WWE on at this point, because the last thing you want is to make Asuka look like a cold champion when you've had to work so hard to build her back up to a certain level. But you have Becky not come away from the Rumble with the title. You have Charlotte win, and then Charlotte is the one that challenges Ronda. She's the one that makes the switch to Raw for that big match. And then Becky is suddenly this outcast that's got to fight her way back into the match. She is the one that will ride the wave of momentum given to her by the audience. Let's say she wins an Elimination Chamber for the SmackDown title shot and then insists, no, I want to be on Raw. Not only do I want to finally get my match with Ronda Rousey, I want to be the one to step over Charlotte like she's always stepped over me. Something like that. Like, she's got the people on her side, and that's what's going to carry her in the main event.
But if that's the case, what on earth happens with the SmackDown Women's Championship?
It's a weird concern.
Yeah.
It's a weird worry. We tried to sort of speculate on who could slot in there, and I don't know.
I wish we'd led with this, because I'm way, way, way more invested.
So much more.
In the Women's Royal Rumble than the men's.
My worry is they won't put it on last this year, because they did last year.
I know.
And it's ridiculous.
Because as ambivalent as I am towards the men's Rumble, I am equally as invested in the Women's Rumble, because I've got no bloody idea what the hell's going on, especially in the wake of the announcement of this SmackDown Women's title match. Becky's got to enter it somehow and maybe get eliminated by Nia Jax or maybe Ronda Rousey. There's so much narrative potential in everything surrounding Becky Lynch at this point that I can't wait for this match. As for the SmackDown Women's title at WrestleMania, multi-man, six-pack challenge. At this point, I couldn't care less, because you can rehabilitate a title at some point through various means. You cannot recapture lightning in a bottle. That title should be secondary to the star, and Becky Lynch needs to come out of the Royal Rumble either victorious or never having more momentum behind her in some fashion or other.
The maddest thing that I've seen suggested online, and let's be honest, there's no anything outside the realms of possibility with WWE. Is there any way, and I realise how ridiculous this sounds as I'm saying it.
And this is you saying it as well.
This is me saying it. Is there any...
R-Truth again?
No, not Carmella or R-Truth or anything like that. It's legitimate, this is, for once from me. Becky Lynch beats Asuka and then wins the Rumble, and you have the champion versus champion match we were meant to have at Survivor Series. I don't know how on earth that works in terms of this, both titles or not. I don't know.
Wilbourn, they would never bury SmackDown like that. Wouldn't? What? It's not like they did it last bloody November. So yeah, great shout. It's happening.
I'm not against it, but I think WWE are against that singles match. And to be fair, they've worked me into wanting the triple threat as well. There was a time when I was more Charlotte, they're going to wedge her back in. Whereas now I feel like they've done really well to establish the rivalries between stars. Becky's sort of wave of momentum has dragged up everybody else alongside her, and that's for the betterment of the product. So I now want the triple threat that WWE probably want. So if you have that, then it's Charlotte the one that somehow got to wedge herself in, and I can't see how logically fans would back that. That would very much look like an office move. It would be hard not to feel the hand of the author. Wedging Charlotte.
It's mind blowing that I'm sitting here and thinking, how on earth do you not have Becky Lynch win the Women's Royal Rumble? That's the most open goal since Bryan was supposed to win it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And yet, this is yes.
People cannot be trusted.
But wildcard bets. Well, I suppose everyone's a wildcard outside of Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair to win the Women's Royal Rumble match. The likes of Ember Moon and Alexa Bliss, or even Sasha Banks.
We were talking in the office this morning. Ember Moon was only an outlier because of the idea that we need an opponent for Asuka. All the Royal Rumble has been centered around Ronda Rousey's title. But if that feud can stand alone, then maybe you do open with the Rumble and you take a bit of the focus away from Raw and you give it where it's needed, which is to SmackDown. Ember Moon and Asuka have got great form together and an unfinished feud in NXT. Asuka's slightly broken compared to the one that first got called up, but she had this run of amazing matches with talent where the only goal of the NXT opponent was to beat Asuka, and as a result those matches was so much better than they had any right to be. So Ember Moon to me would be a leading candidate to give Asuka this great WrestleMania match.
My issue with this is that if they didn't... I've been given no evidence whatsoever to suggest that they see anything in Ember Moon beyond being a body to wrestle some matches on telly. That's all I've been given the impression that she is to them. Not to me. Obviously, I agree with everything he said. She's amazing. If they didn't like her enough to give her a marquee match with Asuka at Evolution, I can't see them doing the same thing at a bigger show like WrestleMania.
My gut feeling is they still want something big for Nia Jax at WrestleMania. So having her win the Royal Rumble or have a big Asuka match, could be. I just think like if you look at like what
No.
she's no, but like
No way.
At no point of the
I've got a chest infection.
At no point.
If my performance has been subpar on this podcast, it's because I've got a chest infection. I'm still feeling a bit feverish.
Well-
You're going to like make me feel more ill.
Well, hang on, but you've just come
More
up with,
ill.
You've just come up with an excuse for a bad performance. Nia Jax hasn't ever needed one, and she still continues to get a push. There's been no reason why she's been given opportunity after opportunity.
I feel more ill, and I've got an actual virus inside my body. Like, don't give them ideas.
And I've seen this Sidgwick following WWE pay-per-views more than the positive one, so I don't want to rule that out either.
I'm sweating, man.
Well, there we have it.
Sweating like Nia Jax after shitting just somebody backstage.
Let us know your thoughts.
Then she remembers, oh, hey, I'm related to The Rock. I'm going to be all right.
Let us know
All right.
your predictions for the Royal Rumble match in the comment section below. Or you can tweet at us at WhatCultureWW. In fact, you can follow us all on Twitter. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael
and
Hamflett.
follow Michael Sidgwick at.
I'm ill. M. Sidgwick.
You can follow me at Adam Wilbourn. Don't forget to subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes or Spotify for daily podcasts. My thanks to the Dadley boys. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.
Bye.